Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Crime Rewind. My name is Jen Marie, and this is part 2 of the Tara Louise Baker case that I'm going to be discussing with you. Now, in part 1 of the Tara Baker case, I talked about the bright light that was Tara, the family fighting for justice, and the failings of the Athens-Clarke Police Department to apprehend her murder in the 20 years since it has happened. The glaring mistakes will continue and probably shock you as I introduce the possible suspects, and there's a lot of suspects, and their links to Tara. And I'll also try to give you a concise timeline of the days leading up to Tara's murder and those after Tara's murder. I'll also include some witness accounts of individuals close to the case who have recently come forward to Cameron J., who has the podcast Classic City Crime. And because their statements were dismissed by the Athens-Clarke Police Department when they went to them, and they weren't taken seriously or followed up on. So they called Cameron J. After all these years, they called Cameron J. To tell him about what they remember. And some of it's pretty shocking, and I can't believe that the Athens-Clarke Police Department didn't pay any attention to some of these witness accounts, because when you hear about them, they're I don't know. They're just, they're pretty relevant. I think some of them are pretty relevant to the actual case. And I find it crazy that the Athens-Clarke Police Department didn't take them seriously and just dismissed it. So I'm going to try to talk about that. And so after the fire at Tara's apartment on January 19th, 2001, the scene, which was, we come to find out, contaminated by both police and firemen, was released only a few days later, like 2 days later it was released, meaning that they had processed everything at the scene that they intended on processing, and they no longer needed it to be secure. So Ashley and Valerie, who were the two roommates of Tara's, came in to remove all of their belongings, and Lindsay, Tara's stepfather, sifted through what was left of Tara's possessions and tried to salvage what was not destroyed by the fire. Lindsay he only was able to find a few things of Tara's, because remember from part 1 I told you that the fire was only contained in Tara's bedroom, was where the fire was. So everything in her room was very severely damaged. Her body was burnt. Everything in her room. Nothing else except for outside of her bedroom was damaged, except for smoke and water damage. But Lindsay did manage to he found a few things. He managed to take home a singed photo album, a few collectible nutcrackers, because Tara collected, those Christmas wooden nutcrackers. She collected those, so he was able to take home a few of those, and a piece of antique furniture that the Bakers eventually, they paid to have restored, so they, in hopes of handing it down to maybe some grandchildren of theirs. None of these items had been processed by the police. So the Bakers eventually grew so frustrated over the lack of communication and cooperation from the police department, that they decided to take matters into their own hands. They contacted world-renowned forensic scientist Henry Lee to ask for his assistance. Now, I don't know if you're a true crime fan and you've watched true crime shows on TV. I've been a true crime fanatic for a very long time. So Henry Lee had a show. He's very famous forensic scientist. And so they contacted him, and he actually agreed to help them and to take on Tara's case and to consult on this case for them. And they pointed out, the Bakers said that they would happily pay for his services themselves. Now, he agreed to consult on the case, and Virginia, Tara's mother, went to the Athens-Clarke Police Department to ask if they would allow Dr. Lee to have access to Tara's file. Their response, the police department's response, was they would, but only if Dr. Lee reports his findings to the Athens-Clarke Police Department and to no one else, including the family. So the family didn't agree with that, obviously, because the police department was asking, even though the Bakers would pay Dr. Lee to consult, the police department refused to let him share what he found with her own family. So they didn't go through with it because it obviously defeated the whole purpose of hiring an outside expert. So they didn't do it. Now, according to Virginia, that was the situation was done, and she was under the impression that Dr. Lee did not consult on the case due to the reluctance of the Athens-Clarke Police Department to share the file. But recently, and this is recent, pictures have surfaced showing Dr. Lee meeting with officials to discuss Tara's murder. Now, when Virginia was told about this, she didn't know anything about it, and she was surprised and still unsure of the meaning of these pictures being valid. Now, I mean, because she didn't know about it, and the last thing she heard was that Dr. Lee didn't meet with the police department. But pictures, I mean, have come up with him at the Athens-Clarke Police Department. No one knows what came of that meeting. I mean, she tried to ask the department about this supposed meeting with Dr. Lee, and true to form, they refused to even acknowledge the meeting and what came of it. So no one knows what happened with that. Dr. Lee's never commented. He still won't comment. Obviously, the police department is not divulging any information on this. Another issue that the family dealt with was the fact that the coroner's office refused to issue a death certificate for Tara. For 10 years, they refused. 10 years. And the family ran into a lot of problems when it came to dealing with Tara's death. And there's just things that you have to do when someone passes away. There's certain things you have to do. And in order to, I don't know, provide to not only personal, like emotional closure, but literally closure in like the world, you know, like as far as financial accounts and Social Security and things like that, you need someone's death certificate to be able to prove that this person is now deceased. It's a fact, okay? But the coroner's office refused to give them a death certificate for 10 years. It took a written request from the Bakers to the governor of Georgia to finally make them issue an official death certificate. And on the death certificate, they still omitted the cause of death. All that was written in the cause of death section was, quote, death is due to multiple injuries, end quote. So they still wouldn't. And at this point, 10 years later, I don't think the Bakers still knew what exactly happened to Tara. They still hadn't been told what exactly happened to her. So the only thing they would put on the death certificate is death due to multiple injuries. So the excuse continually being given by the department is that they can't release any info on the case because it's an active investigation and might include guilty knowledge known only to the killer. And this is understandable. It really is, to a certain extent. But they refused to even talk to Tara's mother. And she was just recently informed of how her daughter actually died. Recently, 20 years later. And the way the detectives did this was they visited Virginia at her house and proceeded to act out the murder in a sick game of charades. Literally, they acted out how she was killed to her mother at her home. So, which obviously shocked and horrified Virginia. I mean, no one wants to, even 20 years later, no one wants to, charades? Really? So, Athens-Clarke Police Department still continue to refuse any and all outside help. And Tara's brother Kevin believes that they have been in way over their heads since the very beginning. As of right now, there are 4, and I looked this up, there are 4 detectives assigned to the robbery homicide unit in the Athens-Clarke Police Department. 4. There's 4. The caseload is made up of current and cold cases. So you have 4 detectives responsible for current homicides and cold case homicides. So, I mean, 4? That's, no wonder why the case isn't being worked on. I mean, that's ridiculous. How they can't, I mean, there's 4. So, I mean, that's just such a seriously low amount of detectives to be working. There should be at least that many just assigned to cold cases alone. Now, recently, a woman came forward to relate. Once again, I told you, tons of people are coming forward to Cameron J. to tell him their witness accounts that they went to the police with and were dismissed. Okay, a woman came forward to relate a disturbing situation that occurred a few days before Tara's murder and has haunted her since 2001. And this is an unnamed source. It's a woman. It says back in 2001, she had worked in the university's student directory assistant's office. Now, for you young kids, it's like 411. Even you young kids might not know what 411 is. 411 is where you dial them and you ask for a person's number. If it's in the phone book, they can give it to you. I mean, phone books are obsolete now too. But it was the student directory for the college. So all the students that were enrolled at the college, you could basically call this office and request a student's number. The student's home number. Okay, and a few days before Tara was killed, a man had called the office asking for Tara's number. The operator said she remembers the man seeming, quote, high or drunk or possibly upset, end quote, when he called. He also couldn't get Tara's number right and had to be told the digits 8 or 9 times, apparently. She remembers thinking, quote, why can't this guy remember the number? It's so easy, end quote. This was because Tara's number was mostly 5s. So after Tara was killed, the woman who took the call told her supervisor about this strange man, and she was told there was no reason to report it. So I guess she just didn't go to the police. There's no reason. That's what she was told. She also believes that the caller was probably associated with the UGA somehow, either a student, professor, staff member, etc., because no one else would have known this directory service existed. I mean, that's kind of true. Her opinion on the caller's identity becomes shockingly relevant as I introduce suspect number 1. Okay, this suspect, along with the others on this list, will not be identified by name because they are all presumed, of course, to be innocent until found guilty in a court of law. We should all remember that, okay? There's no reason to harass anybody, or, I mean, I think that's horrible. I mean, because some of these people are innocent. There's only one person that's guilty, and we don't know which one. I mean, we can make guesses, but that's not a reason. Just because we think it's a certain person one way or other, we don't know that. So until they're proven guilty in a court of law, we have to presume they're innocent because that's the way our justice system works right now. So, and in order for it to work, we all need to follow the same. We all need to follow that. So, and accusing innocent people of something horrendous can ruin lives. It really can. And I feel really bad every time I see an innocent person who has had their life ruined by being accused of something they didn't do. It's very sad. It's very sad. So, you know, it's just horrible. So, just keep that in mind, okay? Now, Tara's boyfriend at the time, he will be referred to by his real name. This is because even though he was considered a suspect at one time, he has since been cleared and is no longer on the suspect list. Okay, so the first suspect on the list is a man who had been a classmate of Tara's as a first-year law student. The first year's law students were randomly split up into groups of about 40 law students, and this young man was placed in the same group as Tara and her friends Gina and Katie, who I've talked about. Amongst the female law students in the group, he was considered to be weird and creepy, continuously asking a lot of the girls out on dates, including Tara. She politely declined because she had a boyfriend at the time. He kept asking her out, however, and she kept telling him that she had a boyfriend. Most of the students steered clear of him, stating that they all felt he was off somehow. Which, to point out, you can be weird, not be a murderer, okay? But they just, I mean, everyone has consistently said that there was something about him that was disturbing or didn't sit right, okay? He would make off-color and inappropriate comments in class for everyone to hear, and also outside of class to random women that he encountered. The first set of investigators assigned to the case focused their attention entirely on suspect number one for a long time, determined to make him Tara's murderer regardless of whether he was actually guilty. They began their campaign of trying to get him caught, get him for murder, by enlisting Katie and Genia's help in spying on him and, quote, digging up dirt, end quote, on the guy. Talking about it now, Genia and Katie recognize how highly inappropriate this was for the detectives to ask them to do this. According to Katie and Genia, the police had told them they were hesitant. Police had told them they were hesitant to question the suspect themselves because, quote, he knew about law, end quote. So they got Katie and Genia to try to do it for them. I'm not sure if he's ever been formally questioned by the police. I'm not sure. I don't think they've ever said, of course. So I'm not sure if he's been questioned. In any case, there's never been any physical or circumstantial evidence to tie this classmate, I don't know his name, tie this classmate to the fire or to the murder. So, and that's literally all the information we have on suspect number one. Don't know his name, don't know anything about him. We just know that he bothered Tara. Tara had made a comment to her mother the last time she talked to her mother. She had commented to her mother that there was a classmate of hers that was not harassing her, but that was making her uncomfortable, I guess. So, I mean, it's makes you think about that whole incident that happened with the man who called the student directory asking for Tara's number. Because, the lady said she thought it was a person who had to be associated with UGA itself. So, and that's pretty much the only suspect who is associated with UGA. I don't know, but the detectives focused their attention solely on him for a while. But then they shifted their attention to someone else, and the second suspect that we're going to talk about is Tara's boyfriend, Chris Melton. Now, Tara and Chris, they had met each other while attending Georgia College in Milledgeville when they were introduced by a mutual friend. Tara had needed someone to accompany her to a formal dance, and a mutual friend suggested that she ask Chris, which she did. He accepted, and this turned out to be the first date of many. They casually dated over the years, and they continued to see each other on campus, but the level of their relationship never progressed past that. So Tara graduated from Georgia College a year early, and she left the area. Chris graduated a year later, and he went home to Lovejoy, because he was from Lovejoy, to live with his parents while he tried to start his own plumbing business, which I think he still has. He has that business today, still. But he still continued to think about her a lot, and kept her number to stay in contact, just in case. He decided to finally call her, and they then made plans to meet up. Now, when they saw each other again, this time the attraction was instant and undeniable. And after this, they saw each other as much as their schedule would allow them to. And there was a little bit of a distance between them. So they saw each other as much as they can. Now, the last time Chris spoke to Tara before she was murdered was around 4 p.m. Thursday, January 18th, which was the day before she died. He said she sounded normal. They talked on the phone. She was normal. There was nothing unusual or wrong about the situation. They discussed the upcoming weekend and him coming to Athens to see her because it was her birthday. So he was going to drive to Athens to spend time with her. And then he got a phone call on Friday the 19th from Virginia telling him that there had been a fire at Tara's house and she may have been inside. He dropped everything. He was at work on a job site. He dropped everything and raced to Athens. He went straight to the police department. They told him that they needed him. This is messed up. They told him that they needed him to identify the body. Okay, the boyfriend. When the parents were already there, Virginia and Lindsay were already there at the police station. They told him that they needed him to identify the body. He finally agreed only because he was told if he didn't do it, then the parents would have to identify her, and he didn't want to put Virginia and Lindsay through that. which is, to me, that's just insane. I mean, first of all, I don't know how that's legal, or it's completely out of protocol. I mean, they're going to let the boyfriend identify her? That's just, I don't know. It's just silly, okay? Get this. Then, okay, this was the day of the fire. So when he finally agreed to identify her, they took him to the scene of the fire because her body was still there. She wasn't in the morgue. Hadn't been brought back to the morgue. She was still at the scene of the fire. They took him to the scene of the fire. Okay, to me, that's unheard of. That's crazy. Okay, they took him to the scene of the fire. The house was still smoking and smoldering. They had just managed to get the fire put out. Okay, 2 detectives escorted him through the yard up to the front door, where a fireman stopped them about 10 foot away and told them, quote, "He can't come in here." That's when Chris realized this wasn't just a normal fire or an accidental fire or something. Something else must have happened. That is when he realized that there must be something else going on. Chris mentions that when he was there, he saw no crime scene tape up in order to stop the area from being contaminated. You know, you always see the crime scene tape. There's nothing. There's people running around. There's no crime scene tape up. Nothing like that. Instead of him going in, because he wasn't allowed to go in, the detectives went in with a digital camera and took a picture of her to show him. Okay? And then they brought it back out to him, showed it to him. He said he thought it was her, but he wasn't sure. He was in such shock that his mind was telling him that it just couldn't be her. It wasn't possible. He was just, in denial. Come on. Think about what this poor guy's going through. He's traumatic. It's traumatizing. Okay, he's being told that his girlfriend's possibly dead. And then they go in and take a picture of a dead body and then bring it out to show it to him on a shitty digital camera, like from the early 2000s. Seriously, that's just horrible. How could the police department do this to people? He told them, he was like, "I don't know if it's her. I can't tell. It looks like her. But, there was a fire. She was burnt. I don't know what kind of condition the body was in, but I'm sure pretty bad." So he told them that if it was her, she should be wearing a pair of diamond earrings that he had given her. And apparently these were decent-sized diamond earrings, like a carat and a half each diamond earrings. Really pretty, real diamonds. And he said he remembered that she always wore them. She never took them off. So if it was her, she would be wearing these earrings. Okay, they went back in and then reappeared with earrings that they had actually taken off of her body and showed him. So they went in. They took evidence off of a crime scene, a body at a crime scene. Just took pieces of evidence off of her, brought it out to him and showed him. And that's when he realized it was her. And he's like, "Yeah, those are the earrings I bought her." And he realized that it really was true and that she was dead. So, once again, mistake. Who the hell does that? Takes evidence off a body. That's, that you don't do that. You just don't. That's evidence. You don't know who could have touched that. Did they dust them for prints? Did they I don't know. It's like these people didn't even train to be a detective at all. It's sad. After that, Chris says suddenly the detective's attitude toward him changed. They went from being respectful and gentle to being aggressive and intimidating. Even though they did that, he remained absolutely cooperative, did everything they asked of him. Every single thing. After the police interrogated him and they verified his alibi, they did verify his alibi, like that day, they verified his alibi. He then joined the Baker family, who were also at the police station. He says everyone was just in shock and no one wanted to believe that this could actually be happening. Of course. In the ensuing weeks and months, the police started harassing him and his family. Chris, they started harassing him. Now, he was staying in his parents' basement, I think, in Lovejoy. So that means they were harassing his parents as well. even though they had verified his alibi and airtight alibi. They verified it. Still harassed him. They continued to harass him. They would call his home, call his parents' home, the home phone, around 2:30, 3 o'clock a.m. and tell him he needed to come to the station right then because they needed to collect more evidence. Blood samples, tissue, additional fingerprinting, and they wanted to do polygraph testing. And they did this more than one time. Many times. Many times they did this. He did everything they asked him to do. He never refused. He did it every single time. He would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go to the police station, do what they asked him to do. Every time. He never refused. Chris says at one point the GBI got involved, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. They got involved. He said they would show up in unmarked vehicles, like the men in black, at his job sites and proceed to interrogate him in front of his entire work crew at his job sites. So, a couple years go by, and the harassment eventually dies down when out of the blue, a new GBI agent on the case calls him. This agent is a female, I think. This agent says to him, quote, "Mr. Melton, you are a hard man to find," end quote. Now, this was the comment that was the last straw for Chris. He had it. He was done. Okay, he proceeds, he gives it back to him. He proceeds to ask them if perhaps they lost his file due to incompetence because his phone number has never changed and he lives at the exact same address. That's exactly what I would say. They know exactly where to find him. He has been in the same place the whole time. So I would be the same way with them. I mean, be like, really? I'm a hard person to find. You know where I'm at. Phone number's never changed. Address has been the same. So what you're saying is complete bullshit. It's just like a psychological tactic to get me confused. You know, I mean, it's come on now. I mean, it's just stupid. So I mean, he was. I would be even worse. I would probably get arrested because I would go off. I wouldn't go for that. Yeah, because it's crap. It's crap. Okay, and that's actually when that GBI agent said that to him. That's when Chris realized the authorities actually, in this time, a couple years, they have nothing, and there's been no progress whatsoever, because, you know, he's thinking that, okay, I've done everything they've asked. I've passed all the polygraph tests. There's no DNA. There's no fingerprints. They verified my alibi. I'm not the guy. And so if they are coming back to me and harassing me once again, that means they don't know. That means they don't know. If they're coming back to me, I mean, obviously they have nobody else. They have nothing. They have nothing. That's when he realized they have nothing. All this time, they have nothing. So, he is married now, actually, with kids of his own, but he still gets very emotional when talking about how special Tara was. He tearfully commends Virginia and Lindsay on the amazing job they did in raising Tara, and he still gets very upset. And that's not disrespecting the wife that he has right now, obviously, but you know, just he obviously wishes that wouldn't have happened to Tara because she was just a good person. So it still makes him upset to this day. Now, between undergrad and grad school, Tara had taken a brief break, and she got a job as a clerk at one of the top law firms in Athens called Fortson, Bentley, and Griffin. We are actually at 440 College Avenue, and this is the law office that Tara Baker worked at when she was actually murdered. And the name of that law firm at the time was, I think it still is the same, is Fortson, Bentley, and Griffin. And the building right behind me, this building, I'm not sure which suite. I think there's different suites. I was unable to find that out. The law offices are actually no longer located here. They moved locations, I think 2006. They moved to a different location, and she was killed in 2001. But this is the building where she worked at Fortson, Bentley, and Griffin. Now, this firm started in 1946 and was known as Milner and Stevens, and was located in the Tillman Building on College Avenue in downtown Athens. In 1949, the firm moved a block north to the Southern Mutual Building. In 1952, the name of the firm became Milner, Stevens, and Bentley. In 1954, Milner left the firm to become the president of the National Bank of Athens, which is now SunTrust. And for a year, the firm was just Stevens and Bentley. In 1955, Fortson and Griffin joined the firm, and it became Stevens, Fortson, Bentley, and Griffin. It's a mouthful. In 1960, Stevens was elected to the U.S. Congress, and the firm name was shortened to Fortson, Bentley, and Griffin. In 1983, the firm moved its office to the corner of College Avenue and Doherty Street in downtown, and this was actually where the office was located when Tara worked there. In 2006, the firm moved to its now current location, which is on Daniels Bridge Road, and Tara had worked there as a paralegal / clerk in the real estate department. She worked there full time during her break until she decided to start law school. She was still, I think, going through the application process and doing the preparations for that. So she worked there for a year and a half, something like that, full time until she started law school. Her good friend Lauren, who worked there as well, still kept in touch with her after she started law school, and they talked or saw each other at least 2 times a week. Lauren says at work, Tara was very diligent and precise in her duties. She was a perfectionist, and she wanted things done correctly. Everyone there loved her because she was so sweet and kind. She didn't have any enemies. She was friends with everybody. As a group, they would hang out sometimes, they meaning the clerks and the paralegals and things like that. Usually, obviously, the lawyers never joined in because, they workaholics. And, there's a division of work there between the lawyers and their secretaries and clerks and things like that. Anyways, as a group, they would hang out sometimes at a restaurant or bar downtown after work on Thursdays and Fridays. Lauren said everyone who worked at the firm was really like a big family. Lauren last talked to Tara the Wednesday before her death on the phone to solidify the birthday plans for that Friday. Now, there was a young male attorney at this firm who was part of the group of friends who went out after work. He was, I think, the only attorney who went out with them occasionally. He wasn't long out of law school himself, actually, being in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. He was pretty young. He was very young. He had graduated from a top 5 law firm school, top 5 law school, and was very intelligent, apparently. Lauren says that him and Tara in particular had a very special friendship. But at one point, this young attorney had stopped going out with them on their weekly hangouts due to the fact that he was in fact married, and his wife didn't like him going out after work. So he had told Tara, actually, when she had invited everybody from work to go out for her birthday, he had told Tara that he wouldn't be able to go to the birthday gathering, but she really wanted him to be there. She considered him to be a very close friend. So that Friday morning on the 19th, Lauren went in early to work so she could talk to him and try to convince him to come out for the celebration, even if it was only for 5 minutes. Lauren says when she got there, he was not there, however. Normally he would be there. That's why she went in early, because normally he was there. Lauren was curious, so she checked his calendar for the day. According to the calendar, he had no meetings, no appointments, and no court appearances scheduled. His day was clear. So, I don't know. Maybe he decided to take the day off. Doesn't seem right. But shortly after Tara's death, Lauren decided to attend law school herself, and left Athens in order to do so because she didn't want to be in Athens anymore after that. And about a year later, after she left Athens and had started attending law school, she started having these questions and these thoughts in her mind about the situation surrounding Tara's death. One red flag to her was the fact that the morning after Tara's murder, that young attorney failed to show up for work. Then on Saturday, that same week, he showed up, basically the day after Tara died. He showed up at a mutual co-worker's house and was behaving very strangely. Apparently, he was a big partier and liked to do drugs when he was drinking. On a few occasions, other co-workers said they thought he was definitely, quote, coked up, end quote, or on something. When he showed up at his co-worker's house the day after Tara's murder, he was disheveled, acting erratically, and was observed to have scratch marks on his neck. When questioned about these scratches, he claimed he had gotten a new cat or kitten, and the cat had gave him the scratches. Also, when asked his theory on who the killer was, he emphatically yelled out, quote, "It's the father did it," end quote. Everyone was obviously surprised at this outburst and this accusation. A woman who worked at the firm at that time came forward confessing that she, in fact, had an affair with this attorney and they'd slept together on 2 different occasions. She didn't disclose this information to the GBI until 10 years later. She didn't tell them. Okay, another lady came forward saying she had also had an affair with him that started about 2 to 3 months before Tara's murder. She said that although she never did drugs with him or witnessed him doing drugs, he talked about drugs quite a bit. A few months after Tara was murdered, the young attorney left the firm and moved out of Georgia. He is still practicing law today. A female employee of the law firm where Tara worked commented on the young attorney's behavior at work. She said he acted more like one of the office staff instead of one of the distinguished lawyers, joking around with the women and, quote, cutting up, end quote. But instead of being charmed by him, she actually felt put off, and he made her feel uncomfortable. She also says that his behavior towards Tara seemed odd to her. The law firm Fortson, Bentley, and Griffin recently issued a statement confirming certain details about this lawyer. That Tara had worked there from June 1999 to August of 2000, so a little over a year. The young attorney, thought to be a suspect in Tara's murder, did work there as a lawyer for 16 months from January 1999 to June of 2001. He had graduated from the University of Virginia School of Law and then practiced at the firm King & Spalding in Atlanta. No one in the firm has had contact with him since his departure. And apparently when he left the firm, he didn't say goodbye to anyone. There was no going away party, no sort of send-off for him. He didn't really let anyone in the office know about it, which is weird because supposedly he was supposed to be friends with everybody there. So the fact that he doesn't tell anybody that he's leaving or doesn't say goodbye, I mean, it just sounds like guilty conscience or guilty, I don't know. That's what you do when you are trying to hide something or run away from something. When asked, 2 different lawyers' secretaries both say they think the young attorney had something to do with her murder. Tara's stolen laptop, I talked about that in part 1, according to an anonymous tip, was used after her murder to try and buy drugs from a local drug dealer who at the time lived at the River Mill Apartments. This drug dealer says he knew the guy as Ant, and that he liked to break into houses and steal items to sell to support his habit. When shown a picture of the attorney Tara worked with, the drug dealer says he looked familiar and he feels like he knows him. So this Ant becomes our suspect number 4. And so Cameron J seems to think, I do too, think that this is a relevant link, that Ant, this suspect number 4, Ant, is linked to this attorney because the attorney apparently liked to do drugs, coke, and Ant was a drug dealer. And so we think that the attorney was connected to Ant because he went to him for his drugs. So, and both of them were seen together many times in downtown Athens at different bars and things like that. So, but none of this obviously can be verified. We just have people's word saying that they saw them together and stuff like that. So, but this suspect number 4 is a guy named Ant. I don't know his real name. Sometimes Ant is shortened from the name Anthony. I don't know. I don't know his actual name. But Cameron J speaks to Ant's brother, who talked about Ant's life and his character. The brother says that Ant used to get in a lot of trouble in their younger years, but that he had, quote, a heart of gold, end quote. He always took care of family members and friends and showed love to those less fortunate. Despite all that, he was constantly in and out of prison. So, but when he was out of prison, he was a great guy. Eventually, the tough stints in jail put Ant on a straight path, the brother says. After his last prison stay, he decided to help people struggling with drug habits and other harmful addictions like gambling and stealing. He always believed that doing good for other people was more important than doing for himself, which is a good philosophy to have if it's true. He and his brother together started a music production group called the Wild Wolf Pack, and some of the members went on to be successful rappers, actually. and also used to lecture at schools, like elementary schools and middle schools, and would talk to the students about staying in school and the importance of not giving into peer pressure and succumbing to the enticement of illegal activities that are abundant in the hood. His words, not mine. The brother then went on to confirm that Ant did used to sell drugs back around the year 2000, but he doesn't think he had anything to do with Tara's murder. Now, unfortunately, Ant has passed away. Passed away in 2017, so he can no longer be questioned or anything like that. I don't know what he died of. Maybe a drug overdose or getting shot. I mean, when you're involved in things like that, who knows? It could be anything. I don't think he was. I think he was older, so maybe it was natural causes. I mean, okay, we'll talk more about Ant later. But suspect number 5, another suspect in the case, is the maintenance man of Deer Park Properties, which is the houses where Tara lived. There was called Deer Park, and there was apparently a maintenance man that had a what do you call it, like a skeleton key that would open all the properties. Okay. Now this is because there was no forced entry. There's no evidence of forced entry to Tara's house. So that's why the police think the maintenance man is a good viable suspect. The front door was deadbolted from the inside. The maintenance man, like I said, had access to all the properties. He could have used the skeleton key to get in her house and then lock the door behind him when he left. Either that or Tara knew her killer and let them into the home, and then they left out of the kitchen window, which I mentioned in the first part. Her family states that Tara was very diligent about locking her doors and safeguarding to ensure her own personal safety. She would have never let a stranger into her home. Now there's news footage that Camera J actually found of from the day of the murder that shows the maintenance man at the scene of the fire pacing back and forth outside of Tara's house. Camera J actually involved a body language expert to view this footage to give their opinion on the maintenance man's behavior. The body language expert who viewed this footage, which is only 16 seconds long apparently, says that he has crossed arms. The crossed arms displayed by the suspect could possibly mean that he is trying to comfort himself because he is highly uncomfortable in this situation. There were firefighters, policemen, news cameras, all roaming the scene, so there was a lot of chaos and confusion, and therefore the crossed arms and the self-hug of the suspect. According to police, which, the body language expert says that's not a sign of guilt. The fact that he was there is just, I don't know. I mean, it's, when you see anything like that going on, you want to go see what it is. So, and plus he was kind of in charge of that area. So it doesn't necessarily show a sign of guilt. But according to police reports in Tara's case, the maintenance man, who was also apparently a known drug user, tried to commit suicide 3 weeks after the murder inside a different house on Fawn Drive. I don't know if that's where he lived. I don't know. He claimed the reason behind the suicide attempt, was his girlfriend breaking up with him. Yeah. So, I don't know. Another woman came forward recently and contacted Camera J to tell him a story about a certain member of her family that she has always feared had something to do with Tara's murder. And for good reason. She has a cousin who we're going to call D, because I don't know his name. As children, her and her siblings spent a lot of time around D. She recounts instances when he would torment them physically, mentally, and emotionally. The most horrendous times were when he would entice her and her sisters outside with the promise that he had kittens for them to look at and pet and play with. So then they would be like, oh, really? And then they go outside, and then he would take these kittens, apparently put them into a sack, and hang them up in a tree, and then beat the sack with a baseball bat until they were dead. And he did this several times and always made her watch. Gross. She said she also knows, other than that, there's things other than that. She also just says that comments that she doesn't know where he gets all these damn kittens. Like where does he keep getting kittens? Like he's like just showing up with batches of kittens and like okay. But she knows that he also sexually and physically abused his own sister. Come to find out that Camera J found this out. Come to find out, this man D was actually questioned by the police for Tara's murder because he was employed by Deer Park Properties as a maintenance man. So that's crazy. And I think those are all the suspects right now. And has been, because it's not like they've come up with anything new in the past 20 years. There's nothing new. So I know this part is already running long. So I was going to do a timeline of the days leading up to Tara's murder and the days after. But I think I'm going to include that in the third part because this part is already running long. And I have a slight cold as well, so I'm kind of tired. And I need to rest. So we're going to do that in the third part. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I know I've took a long break and you know, things in life. So thank you for watching my channel, Crime Rewind. Please subscribe. Please, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. It means a lot to me. And it helps me to get, I don't know, more time to do these videos that I really do care about and solving these murders. So I'm Jen Marie, and I'll catch you on the flip side.